What's up guys, I'm Phoenix Master 1 and welcome back for some more Fire Emblem Heroes, and this is going to be my comprehensive analysis of Otr and the Mythic Hero Banner. So I'll be rating these units based on their performance and their fodder, and I will also have an Anima Mythic Hero tier list in this video. So I'll be comparing all of the Anima Mythic units, and I'll be going over the build options for Otr as well. And if you do enjoy these kinds of comprehensive videos, which take many hours to make, I would really appreciate if you could leave a like and subscribe. So with that said, let us begin, and he is a defense boosting Anima Mythic unit. Defense is a really useful stat in Ether 8's defense because a lot of the common tanks and units like Brave Hector, Brave Edelgard, and Fallen Edelgard, Ninja Lin, many of the Gale Force teams, they're all physical in nature, so increasing the defense of your units on your Ether 8's defense means that you're more resilient to those units and you have better survival chance. So defense is definitely a really fantastic stat to be boosting, and he's an Axe Cavalier, and he's actually the first cavalry defense unit that we have got. He's got Auto, Luff, and Hyther, and this is a new weapon. He did not really have this kind of weapon in the story mode, but they probably realized that it's a bit more underwhelming, so that's why they replace it with this new one, which has got an auto follow-up. So this gives you +3 attack, and it has got Canto 3 built into it, which works from turn 1 to 4, similar to Regan. If he initiates combat, or if he's within 2 spaces of an ally, then he can get +6 attack during the combat and inflict -6 attack debuff on the foe during the combat. So it pretty much creates a 12-point stat differential between Otr and the enemy, and he also makes an auto follow-up attack. So this can work in both phases, but in the enemy phase he needs to be within 2 spaces of an ally, which is not that hard to do, and in the player phase this is always going to be active. In the weapon which he had in the story mode, he basically had the follow-up negation on the enemy, so he trades that for an auto follow-up, which is really good because he doesn't have very high speed, so he desperately needs that. But I wish he also got the follow-up negation on the enemy because he would appreciate that as a tanky Axe Cavalier. He has got a preferred special in Brutal Shell. So similar to Sather Shell, this is going to be an exclusive skill to him, and this is not going to be giving you adaptive damage like Regan's Sather Shell. Instead, it's basically a pre-charged Luna at start of every map. So it allows you to have some really nice firepower in Ether 8's defense, and because of Flow Refresh and his Weapons Triangle advantage, he can definitely have a better time against Brave Hector. But I think we might see a bit of shift evolution in the metagame of tanking in Ether 8's offense, because people will probably start using Even Pulse Tie, which you can get from the Divine Code section if they're going to be using any kind of tanking strategy, and if their near save unit or their melee unit needs to take care of Otr. So with Even Pulse Tie, you can basically wait for 1 turn with Safety Fence and neutralize the pre-charged special of Brutal Shell of Otr. So that could be helpful if you don't want to take a lot of damage. And most of the time Otr is going to get targeted because he's a mythic unit. He's not going to be having extra HP unless it's the bonus season, and unless the opponent is using something like an out of season Legendary Lilina or out of season Quicken Pulse Legendary Sigurd, then it's mostly going to be landing on Otr, and it is going to be getting rid of the pre-charge of Brutal Shell. So that's a counterplay to that skill. And then he comes with Green Dual Cavalry 4, which reminds me of this meme because it's completely worthless on him in terms of arena scoring, because he can already reach 175 BST, and on legendary and mythic units, the dual force skills can only scale up the scoring to 175. So it really does nothing for him in terms of scoring. I guess it's a decent skill because it gives you +2 to all of your stats and also extra HP, which Otr can, I guess, appreciate as a defensive bulky unit. But it's pretty much that. Extra stats, that's pretty much it. Doesn't really do anything in terms of arena scoring. And then he's got Flow Refresh. Now you would think that Flow Refresh might not be a good skill on a slow unit, but keep in mind that it neutralizes effects that can prevent Otr's follow-up attacks, which is present in his weapon. So even if he's going to be slower than Brave Hector, he can still double Brave Hector with Flow Refresh and just hit him for a lot of damage. So that's basically how Otr is going to be functioning, but against many of the heavily invested Brave Hectors, he's going to have to struggle to survive a bonfire, which is going to be doing a lot of damage. But Flow Refresh is definitely pretty nice. It's basically a partial null follow-up, and it also restores 10 HP to him after the combat. Flow Refresh can be helpful and restores HP, so it might hurt if you're trying to use Wings of Mercy units with him, but as it is, Wings of Mercy units with Otr and his Canto is not going to be that good. I'll elaborate on Canto and why it's not that good in Ether 8's defense later on, but basically, let's finish going over his base kit. So he's got attack defense menace, which is definitely a really nice skill. If you're trying to tank Otr, then he's going to be hitting you with this skill, and then he's going to be hitting you with a pre-charge special. So he can definitely hit you really hard, and he can function as a pretty nice Ether 8's defense unit who can open up the 7th slot, similar to what Seiros does. Now let's go for the fact that he's got Canto. Canto is absolutely amazing in the hands of the player because we can use it flexibly to just aid us in the combat in the map. But Canto in the hands of the AI is very linear, which means that after the combat, the unit who has got Canto or a Trace skill basically retreats back. And that really isn't optimal because you want the opponent to get pressured. And if your unit just retreats back, then he's gonna get danced. Or if you're using some kind of assist skill, the unit is going to be moving back, retreating after using that assist skill. So many times if you use an assist skill on a unit with a Canto skill or Trace skill, he can basically create these kinds of loops which will just stop the offensive pressure, the advancement of your team. So that could be really annoying. So I kind of wish he didn't have Canto. So only after turn 4 he stops having Canto. So Canto is really annoying because it can waste the dances, of course, and it can often stop the pressure because if the unit like Otr wouldn't retreat, a unit like a Cavalier like Leif or maybe, I don't know, Selena, Reinhardt would go up ahead and get danced. But because Otr retreats, he will probably get danced many times. So that kind of wastes the pressure, the overlap of pressure in a sense. Having said that, there are some niche strategies using Rally and a Canto unit if you understand how a Canto AI functions on Ether 8's defense, but again, it's pretty niche, and I think most people are really not going to be dabbling into that, and even I myself, I'm not really going to be bothering with it. Simply not going to be running any kind of assist skill on my Otr, if I do get him, that is, and yeah, basically Canto is going to be kind of annoying whenever you are going to be looking at the replays, and it wastes like a dance or something like that on your team, and because of that you lose the match. So not the biggest fan of Canto in Ether 8's defense personally, but as a unit he's definitely pretty nice with the pre-charge special and the cavalry movement. Of course he's not the meta influential unit of the level of Note in my opinion. Note just completely changed the Dark Season and the Light Season, but Otr I don't think is going to be having that big of an impact. He's still good, don't get me wrong, but not that level of meta influential. So we already know his stats, and they have definitely increased his stats a bit to match the Gen 6 BST, and of course they gave him a different weapon, so the precedence is there. If we ever get the original Veronica or Bruno, they'll probably have an updated weapon, an updated BST of course. They have updated the BST if we change the generation of an OC when they're released. So yeah, let's go over his best skills, and I'll be rating his fodder and his unit potential. Otr is a good unit, but he's not necessarily a must-have in my opinion for many people who already have Seiros and they can still function with Seiros as their 7-slot unit. So Otr is good, but not necessarily the meta-influencing demon, I feel like. And his fodder is just top tier. He has got Flow Refresh, which was previously only available on Summer Shida, and you can inherit Flow Refresh and Attack Defense Menace at the same time, and you can also get Green Dual Cavalry 4 on him, and I'll be making a separate video going over the best free-to-play and premium options using Green Dual Cavalry 4, so look forward to that video. It's going to be linked in the description if you watch this later, and his fodder is just really amazing, but as a Mythic unit, I feel like you're fine with just one copy. Mythic merges are a lot better on offense in my opinion, so you shouldn't be running any kind of assist skill if you're going to be using him in Ether 8's defense. Green Dual Cavalry 4 is decent on a budget, but you can still replace it with Deathblow 3 or 4 if you just want to have better throughput on your pre-charged Luna. And Attack Defense Catch in my opinion is the best slotty skill for Otr because it has got amazing synergy with Attack Defense Menace, which is present in his base kit, and it gives him a lot of attack and defense which he really needs. ARD Attack Defense is also an option if you have a Halloween Dozla lying around. Flow Refresh is going to be fantastic for doubling many of the follow-up negation units, like Brave Hector for example, but low attack defense can also be helpful if you just want to hit extremely hard in that one single hit. Attack Defense Menace is basically a must-have on him, especially in Ether 8's defense, and for his Sacred Seals he doesn't have too many options. I guess you can run some support skills, but Deathblow and Attack Defense solo is going to be helpful during the combat, and he's basically a combat-centric Mythic unit. Now, for his potential, he's definitely going to be a bit annoying to the players who simply use Brave Hector as is without any kind of save skill, And against that kind of Hector, he's of course going to be doing a lot of damage, but still against many heavily invested Hectors, he's not going to be able to kill him outright, but still can do a nice chunk. And often that nice chunk of damage is going to be enough for your team to just pressurize the Brave Hector team. But he really folds against many of the common near save tanks like Gustav and Arden, which are really popular. Even Pirate Surtur has got the damage reduction on the first hit, so he can reduce that damage from Brutal Shell. But mostly, Brave Hector is used as a far save tank a lot more than he's used as a near save tank from my experience. And against the common near save tanks, Otr is not going to be able to kill them that easily. Usually the near save tanks are not blue, they're either red or they're green. Either Brave Edelgard, Gustav, or Arden, Selgius, Black Knight, Halloween Myr, stuff like that. And there's also Winter Fae in the green color as well. So against those units, he's not going to be having the best of time, but against the solo Brave Hectors, he's definitely going to be pretty threatening to them and the blue tanks in general. Blue is honestly a pretty nice color for tanking, but Otr can definitely hit those kinds of blue tanks really hard. Otr is also really slow, so if the opponent can have an auto follow-up, which many of them will, and if they're just faster, then they're going to be doubling him as it is, and Otr is going to be dying, and maybe that's for the better, because he can just do the damage from Brutal Shell and die, and hopefully continue the pressure of your defense team. So that's pretty much how he's going to be functioning, and his 3 movement is definitely a bit better than Seiros with 2 movement, if you're not going to running like Odd Tempest on her. So Otr is pretty good as a defense mythic unit, but not exactly a must-have, I would say. Still opens up the 7th slot and gives you nice firepower with threat range of a Cavalier, and also boosts the defense of the units on your Aether Raid's defense. And now let's go over the tier list for Anima Mythic units. So this is from my experience of playing in Vault of Heaven ever since the start, and I've been pretty much consistently hitting top 1k every week. And I've placed the top defense teams. I've also used my own defense team against many of the whale units. So that's pretty much from my experience. It's not an end-all be-all list. So I feel like in tier 1, Mirabilis is going to be the queen, because Mirabilis is fantastic as a mythic dancer, because you can have your mythic unit and also have a dancer in a single slot, and that is extremely good. And Mirabilis can also just provide nice utility with Flower of Ease and her Whimsical Dream Dance. And Mirabilis is not a dancer that can easily be baited out, unlike someone like Triandra or Duopini or any of the ranged dancers. So that is a plus point with Mirabilis. And I feel like if you're a very new player, then Mirabilis, or just a 6 unit team, even without any kind of 7 slot unit, is going to be able to function well with Mirabilis, another dancer, and overall the 6 units. So I feel like Mirabilis is extremely universally useful in any kind of match, because she's going to be doing her role of dancing. And another thing is that she's the only mythic dancer who can run Odd Tempest. So she can match the 3 movement of cavalry units like Duo Liv, Legendary Lilina, Otr of course. So that's really good. And the 3 movement dancer is something which Triandra, many of the other duo dancers, harmonic dancers, cannot have access to. So she's definitely really unique and extremely good for her utility, and has stood the test of time, and people still use Mirabilis unless they have some really busted, duo dancers or something like that. In tier 2, I've got Otr. I feel like he's better than Seiros, but not that by much, because he has got better threat range than Seiros and 3 movement. He also has the, pre-chart special, but Seiros also has some benefits to her, because she's a lot more bulky. She has the follow-up negation in both phases essentially. In the enemy phase, she gets that from her weapon. In the player phase, she can run the impact skill, which comes at her base kit. So the follow-up negation is extremely useful, and she also has access to Dragon Wall, which makes her a lot more bulky, combined with the fact that she's got follow-up negation. And she targets resistance of the enemy, and generally speaking, resistance of many tanks is going to be lower than their defense. So those are the plus points of Seiros. She can of course run Odd Tempest if you want to increase her movement, and the impact skill and her firepower is overall pretty good. But Otr is, I think, slightly better because of the threat range that he provides, and green color can at times be helpful. There's also the fact that people do use Naga a lot, and Naga might get a mythic remix next year. So Divine Fang is basically going to be the tool of how people slay Seiros. So many people do use that. So that could be a bit annoying if you're using Seiros on your Aether Raid's defense. But overall, I feel like if you already have Seiros that you spark from a Hero Rises event, then Otr is not a must-have to get in my opinion, unless you really care about Ether 8's defense and having all of the mythics so that you can have a bonus mythic on your defense team every single season. Both are 7-slot mythic units which can open up more options for dancer traps and stuff like that. And there's also the fact that just having an extra unit means that you can not get swept by a Gale Force team many times and just be an annoyance to an opponent who's trying to collect the pots. Otr definitely excels in that role because of his better movement. And there's also the fact that you can make your units a lot more bulky by having 3 mythic units on your Ether 8's defense, and one of them can be in the 7th slot. God of Strength Duma has aged the best out of any kind of older defensive mythic unit because he's basically a walking catapult. I guess he's an armor unit, so he's more like a crawling catapult, but you get my point. So Duma's value has increased over the time as we have progressed in the game and as Ether 8's metagame has evolved, because we see these upgraded structures that can be level 7, level 8, level 9, and we also have safe defense. So having another catapult, if you're running the catapult structure itself, is extremely amazing because you can target 2 lanes at the same time, and that is extremely good. Not to mention he has got a Pival which damages all of the opponent's units at start of turn for 7 damage, and he also gives attack stat to your Ether 8's defense. So that makes many of the matchups much doable, and you can basically get some kills because of the chip damage that he does from Pival and also the attack that he provides. So Duma's main utility is basically from that. As a combat unit, he can still hit extremely hard, but movement is going to be an issue for Duma because he's an armor unit, so you basically use him as a Wings of Mercy unit because he hits extremely hard even now. So that's basically his combat usage, but he's much more used for his utility. In tier 3 I've got Thrasir, and this might surprise many people having a ranged magical unit in tier 3 below Duma, Seiros, and Otr. And if you have been playing Ether 8s for a long time in Vault of Heaven, you've pretty much seen how Thrasir has fallen off in the modern times because many of the tanks nowadays have follow-up negations, so Thrasir never really gets to the doubling part and triggering her special, so her combat potential has kind of fallen off in my opinion right now. And there's also far safe tanks, and just in general we have a lot more bulky tanks which Thrasir is going to have trouble punching up against. It's not the same time where we didn't have any other mythic than Naga or Altina, when Thrasir was extremely prominent and so dominating. But right now she's kind of fallen off, and that's why I put her in tier 3. She can still be good, but overall do not expect her to basically function like she did in the glory days. And in the final tier, it should be no surprise to anyone, and I don't really think this should be controversial because Leif is going to be in the last place. Leif in general is a very honest unit, and usually that doesn't work out in Ether 8's defense. You need some degenerate stuff. We're talking about Note, Bramimond, stuff like that. So Leif is just too honest. He's an infantry unit, so he doesn't have the highest movement like Otr. He doesn't hit the magic like Seiros. He doesn't open up the 7th slot. He's not a walking catapult. He's not a dancer, and he's not a ranged magic unit like Thrasir. So he's just too honest. But still, he can be a threat in the bonus season with the extra stats. That's pretty much where he will shine. But outside of that, Leif is not going to be the preferred mythic for most people in the Anima season because he really does not do too much for helping you win the matches. So let me know what you think about my Anima Mythic tier list, and what do you feel about Otr as a unit. I'll be eager to hear that in the comment section down below. And with that said, let us start reviewing some of the other units present on this banner. Legendary Byleth, in my opinion, is the best green mage in the entire game as of making this video. He is a phenomenal unit in the current metagame because of his weapon and the preferred special. So he has Drive Null follow-up in his weapon, which is really amazing because he can run Windsweep himself and also support his allies with the Null follow-up effect within 2 spaces. His weapon gives him -1 special cooldown, and with Time Pulse you can have a pre-charged Sublime Heaven, which means that you don't really care about the opponent's guard effect because you're going to be firing off your special. And Sublime Heaven is an extremely powerful special. It is pretty much like a Draconic Aura, and it also disables the damage reduction skills on the opponent, making it basically the only magical Deadeye present in the game. It is also going to be functioning like Dragon Fang against Beast units and Dragon units, and he is a very effective unit against the conventional tanks like Brave Hector, Fallen Edelgard, and stuff like that. The fact that he can run Windsweep means that a lot of units can not really retaliate back to him, and there are not too many tanks who would like to take 2 hits from him because he will just have the Null follow-up effect. and hit you with a really powerful special. In any kind of game mode, Legendary Byleth is going to be a really fantastic unit, and he also has pretty decent fodder, but unfortunately you can only inherit one of these skills at the same time, either the ideal skill or the time pulse. Compared to some of the other fodders, you can inherit time pulse with some other skills, so you have to choose between one of these skills. Celica is a fire legendary green mage, and she also has null follow-up and desperation built into Soul of Zofia. So having null follow-up is really great, but she has to reach the threshold of the desperation in Soul of Zofia to safely attack a lot of the enemies. A lot of the modern green mages like Legendary Byleth or Young Merrick simply have the null follow-up, so they can run wind sweep and safely attack the opponent and still pretty much do the same role. But it's worth noting that she can do true damage based on the resistance of the opponent, so she can cut through the opponent's resistance similar to how her husband cuts through the defense. She does face competition in the modern times, but still she is a pretty competent unit, I would say, and her fodder is pretty decent for any kind of player phase unit with Sparrow 3 and Attack Speed Oath, which you could inherit at the same time. But for a lot of offensive units, they might as well use Time Pulse, a Menace skill, or even a Joint Drive skill over an Oath skill in my opinion, but still a decent fodder overall. Marianne is a blue infantry mage with Icy Fimble Vetter, giving her auto follow up and also inflicting the opponent with attack and resistance debuff. It can also heal up Marianne, and she just needs to be within 3 spaces of a flying or a cavalry ally. So she faces incredible competition from original Micaiah with Thani, Weapon Refine, and Guinevere. The thing is that both of these mages really excel at their role because of the effective damage that they get. Guinevere has effective damage against mages, and Micaiah has got effective damage against cavalry units and armor units. Not to mention, Micaiah also gets the damage reduction in her weapon. So I feel like she kind of stays in the shadow of those two units, but still overall she can function well as a modern blue infantry unit, and her fodder is absolutely amazing with B dual infantry 4 and low attack resistance. She also has joint drive resistance, but the dual skill is basically the most coveted skill here, and that's where most people are going to be using her as a fodder for. Zeke is a solid mixed phase Lance Cavalier, and he's kind of similar to Ducil, but instead of inflicting the attack and defense debuff on the enemy by being solo, he basically gets the distant counter effect. So Holy Gradivis allows him to be a really nice mixed tank because of his mixed bulk, and he also gets an auto follow up from his weapon, so he doesn't really need to run quick riposte, and he can function in both phases. And because of having distant counter in his weapon, compared to Ducil, he can basically have the stand skill and also get the guard effect, which is really good for any kind of tank to just prevent the special charges of the opponent. His fodder is pretty good with defense res menace and lull attack defense, which you can inherit at the same time if you sacrifice the newly received brand new red infantry mage called Alfric. And there are not a lot of units though who would like to have defense res menace and also lull attack defense, because the menace skill of this kind is more suited towards a dragon who can have an adaptive damage, or a unit who has got a weapon that can do adaptive damage. And those kinds of dragons don't really want lull attack defense, so the actual amount of units who can use both of these skills to their full potential is pretty low, and the resistance menace is most of the time just a way of buffing up your own resistance, or even can be helpful if you have a mage ally with you. But generally speaking, the other menace skills are going to be a lot more popular. And you can also have attack defense catch, but all of your inheritance slots are going to be gone into this one skill. It is of course a really fantastic option on many units, like Otr for example, from this very banner. So overall a pretty solid unit and pretty solid fodder. Legendary Chrom is among the kings of the water season along with Legendary Byleth, and both of them are present on this banner. So of course, Legendary Chrom is easily one of the strongest units in the entire game with his preferred weapon and also his assist skill to change fate, which makes him have a really amazing movement, and any kind of movement assist skill like this in arena in your hands is going to be absolutely fantastic because most of your other units are going to be running the rally skills. And you can also make use of this in other game modes. If you've seen my Aether offense videos, then you know how I use Legendary Chrom in a Gale Force team. So his stat spread is really fantastic, but the ideal Chrom is the speedy Chrom because the aim of the build is to not only outspeed many of the tanks but to also prevent doubles from many of the fast units. So any kind of speedy Chrom is going to be having the ideal skill, attack speed push 4, solo skill, or the steady impact with lull attack speed and also the solo secret seal. So that is the most threatening Legendary Chrom that you could face, and if you're building him up like that, then that is pretty much the best option. He can also have Deadeye with Time Pulse and make it a 2-turn special, which he can easily trigger. And with his damage output, it's a very strong special to just pierce through any kind of damage reduction. His fodder is also pretty solid, but I feel like there are not too many units similar to Zeke who would fully make use of this. I feel like there are not a lot of ranged physical units who would like to have both close counter and lull attack defense, because right now in this metagame, we pretty much need to specialize a lot of the range units, especially the physical units. I feel like there are definitely mages who can easily run close counter, but they don't really get anything out of lull attack defense. So that's pretty much my opinion of his fodder. And there's also the fact that if your unit does not use lull attack defense, if they're magical, then you can just have close foil or even close reversal over close counter. So overall his fodder is nice, but he's an extremely good unit himself. Legendary Claude is basically the king of the Earth season with his Fallen Star and Fail Not, and right now I feel like he has gotten a bit better in Aetheryte's offense after the introduction of Safety Fence, because Fallen Star can inflict the gravity effect, so he is an excellent hit and run unit, and he's not at all lacking in power or even in bulk because of the absurd damage reduction that he gets from Fallen Star, and that can also be a status in the enemy phase for the first attack. So he can overall be really bulky, and the null follow built into his Fail Not just disables any kind of cheating skills of the opponents, making him a very strong unit who's not gonna get doubled much at all because he's extremely fast and he just disables the auto follow up skills. His offenses are gonna get the job done for sure, and he's a very fun unit to be used in any kind of game mode, in Arena, Arena Assault, Aetherites, literally anywhere. And he also has really nice fodder in Attack Speed Catch 4 and Speed Defense Rain. Unfortunately, you cannot inherit both of these skills at the same time, and Attack Speed Catch is going to be a lot more coveted than Speed Defense Rain, which is present on a lot more units. Attack Speed Catch is pretty much the premier slotted skill for a lot of the flying units and also the cavalry units, especially if you use a menace skill, and even if you do not, then you can easily get the debuff from your allies as a form of support. So catch skills are really strong, and Attack Speed Catch being a premier offensive option because of its high throughput, and it's definitely much better than the ideal skill, which requires you to be at full HP, and catch skills can be used by a lot more units. Shinon is easily the best infantry archer because of his double bow being a conditional close counter effect, so this is really unique, and usually units have distant counter in their weapon. Shinon has got close counter in his bow, and he also gets -1 special cooldown with this, making Deadeye into a 2-turn special, and then Time Pulse makes it into a 1-turn special. Shinon is a pretty well-rounded infantry archer who can function in both phases, can have decent bulk, and can also run stuff like null follow-up, and his fodder is also top tier just like him with Deadeye and Time Pulse, which you can inherit at the same time. So Ullr has got the same fodder, but Ullr is a light mythic unit, and merges on mythic units, especially on the offense, are a lot more coveted, so Shinon is a bit better as a fodder in my opinion. So yeah, amazing fodder for any kind of archer who hits hard, can make use of the Deadeye, and can also appreciate the Time Pulse. Legendary Leif is a very solid bow cavalier with dual phase brave weapon that also gives you the impact effect when in the player's hands, and he can function really well as a hit and run unit, but he of course has competition from his own self in Cyan Leif, who has got Canto 1 built into his weapon, and he can function really well as a hit and run unit as well, and even much better than Leif in game modes like Aetherites for example, and not be restricted by the water blessing. But still, Legendary Leif is nonetheless a pretty solid water legendary unit, and Niran Zeal is a ranged Gale Force which is extremely unique. He can still run some other specials like Moonbow or Deadeye, depending on if you want to have your options mixed up. Legendary Leif can still have access to the Fortress skill in the slot B, but he'll have to let go of either the Lull skill or the S-Drink to run that. His fodder isn't really all that good, just giving you the attack res push 4, and for the most part this is used on slow mages, but if they're a slow mage then more than likely they are bulky and they don't really appreciate the recall damage. So this is a pretty niche fodder overall, and it's not going to be that useful, so most people are going to be just merging him up. Shadows of Valentia Palla is basically the star of the red pool because she's got the best fodder, the best combat compared to the other 2 units present in the red pool, and she basically saves up the red pool in a sense. So she's got Lady Blade, which is again a dual phase brave weapon just like Legendary Leif. but this one has the adaptive damage, and it also has Canto 2 built into it, so she doesn't really have to run any kind of trace skill to get that effect, and that makes her really versatile because she can run some other skills in slot B. And for the most part, she's going to be used as a mixed phase unit, but can also work in the player phase as a Gale Force unit because of her brave hits. And the adaptive damage is extremely good because a lot of tanks are going to be having higher defense than resistance, so she can hit on the lower resistance side if they do not have Mystic Boost Sacred Seal. Palla has got absolutely fantastic fodder in our dual flying 4, and you could also inherit the assist skill or the range skill if you have access to Leg Yarn, so it can be a really fantastic combo option. Legendary Eliwood is basically a support unit for the most part, giving the bonus doubler effect to the ally who has got the highest stats. His Thrasir skill is an exclusive skill that requires a beast or a dragon unit to be on the team, and then he can give the highest attack unit the attack buff and the defense buff. So bonus doubler as a status effect is decent for support, but it really gets shut down by panic and lull skills. So in that sense, he has a lot of competition for the support slot with Flane, with Niffle, with Muspel, and so many other support units who can give you the unique effects. Even Legendary Byleth present in this banner who gives the Drive Null follow-up. But I feel like bonus doubler has got a bit better in one aspect of the game, and that is in Astra season along with Ashera, because she can basically give the null panic effect, so that pretty much helps you against one of the biggest weaknesses of bonus doubler as a support effect. So he can be useful there, but overall faces a lot of competition as a support unit, and as a combat unit, he just gets blown out of the water by the wind god, Legendary Sigurd, of course. His fodder is kind of underwhelming. Deathblow 4 is like the first tier 4 skill basically, and compared to other skills like cat skills, the push skills, it just boosts your one stat and only in the player phase. I mean, it's pretty good if you're trying to maximize your damage output, but still has a lot of competition, and many units will prefer to run the other tier 4 skills. And the other useful skill that he has is the Dual Rally Plus skill, so overall not the best fodder available on him. Altina has not really aged all that well as an Astra Mythic unit, so she's purely a combat Mythic unit. She doesn't have a single supportive capability other than functioning as a smite bot and maybe soaking some Dark Shrines. At least Naga gives you the Divine Fang buff, which can help you destroy Seiros and Duma, but Altina doesn't really give you anything for support. And for a pure combat Mythic unit who doesn't get extra stats unless it's her bonus season, she really struggles against many of the Aether Raid's defense team which have bulky units, and nowadays in general we have a lot more bulky units being released, so the Vantage strategy isn't really as strong as it used to be, and even less so on a Mythic who doesn't get extra stats from Mythic buffs and stuff like that. So it's a bit unfortunate that Altina is really not going to be functioning that well in the metagame right now, and she really needs some kind of Mythic remix next year. She gives the attack boost, but Regen does that too, and Regen is a free-to-play unit. Everyone has one copy of Regen, and if you're trying to make use of safety fence with some offensive plays, then Regen can do everything. She can break the structures, retreat with Canto, and just do so much more than what Altina can function. And her fodder is equally underwhelming, even more so I would say. Attack Defense Oath is the only skill she provides, and eventually we're gonna get the Oath skills on free-to-play units. We have received the other Oath skills and Rouse skills, so eventually this is gonna be happening. And overall, like, the Oath skill has competition with Time Pulse, the Rain skills, the Menace skills, the Joint Drive skills, so many other really good options. Altina's unfortunately the dud of the red color overall, providing no good fodder, and also faces incredible competition as an Astra Mythic. Overall, the summary of this banner is that the green color and the colorless pool is extremely good value, and blue pool is also pretty amazing with the dual scale present on Marianne. Zeke is also a pretty nice unit, and Legendary Chrom is very solid as a unit himself. Red color is pretty much the dud here, and most people are going to be avoiding this color because, like, if you get extra Eliwoods or Altina, they really do not give you much value. Palla is the only good unit there, and Otr does color share with an extremely good and recent legendary unit in Legendary Byleth, and this banner has got 3 dual skills, one cavalry dual skill in Otr, infantry dual skill in Marianne, and the flying dual skill in Palla. So that could be useful in arena. If you're trying to summon on this banner heavily, then you could try to aim for those skills and basically score much better in arena. If you're trying to complete your legendary core, then the green color has pretty nice fire and water coverage with Byleth and Celica. and there's also the earth and water coverage in the colorless pool. So overall, I feel like this is a pretty solid banner, but unfortunately the main unit is not going to be that incentivizing to a lot of people. Of course, if you really like him, you should go for him and summon him, but if you don't really care about ether rates and you don't really like Otr's character, which I don't blame you for, then there's really not going to be much incentive to go after him. Now, before you summon on this banner, keep in mind the events that are going to be happening next month. I'll go over a summary. So the Halloween banner is going to be coming out, I believe on 7th October, and there's also going to be the reruns of the old Halloween banners. So if you have any kind of unit that catches your eye, you could definitely try to save for them. There's also going to be the double special heroes banner with probably Valentine Henriette. Actually, Valentine Henriette is basically confirmed at this point, and it is likely going to be having Valentine Gustav, Young Leon, Young Lara Shell, and probably even Bright Katria. So that could be a really good double special banner. And the next unit at the end of the month of October is going to be an Earth Ledgering unit, and it's likely going to be blue because next month we have got Uller as the unit who's going to be probably color sharing with Fallen Dimitri, and then they could put a blue unit, which would make total sense. So I hope you all enjoyed this video. Make sure to share this video with your friends who are trying to summon on this banner or just want an overview of Otr. I definitely went in depth. And if you enjoyed, then make sure to leave a like and a comment. Helps me tremendously. And if you really enjoyed, then you can support me directly by using super thanks or by becoming a YouTube member down below. And I want to thank all of my YouTube members. And if you want to see more reviews like this, then make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because YouTube sub boxes are about as functional as Otr is right now in the story mode. So that's it. I'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.